Welcome to the Tunabudget Podcast, your source for insights into financial wellness. Today we're diving into bankruptcy. At Tunabudget.com, home of the Tunabudget Worksheet Plan and Candid Conversation Memos, we offer resources that simplify budget life planning. We encourage discussions about real-life challenges affecting our finances. Don't forget to submit your own Candid Conversation Memo at Tunabudget.com. Let's get started. Bankruptcy, your promise to pay. In this Candid Conversation Memo, you will be exposed to several points of view for consideration. Some points are worth repeating. The legal and moral repayment of your debts will be discussed, so you can see more clearly a few options you may want to use. First, the filing of a personal bankruptcy should be a very rare occurrence in society, and be only used as a final last resort, basically to clean things up if necessary. Debts that are overwhelmingly heavy, clearly beyond one's ability to ever repay, should be subjected to bankruptcy consideration. However, even heavy debt loads can be managed by you and restructured with your creditors according to the repayment capacity you've identified in your Tunabudget Worksheet Plan. After all, you promised to pay your debts, and you are doing the best you can. Share and discuss your plan with creditors to clearly show them your ability and willingness to repay your indebtedness according to your current financial condition. Why would they not listen? It's better than having their debts, or their lender's assets if you would, be legally discharged from a repayment altogether, right? Continue to regularly update and share your Tunabudget Worksheet Plan with your creditors as conditions change, be it quarterly or semi-annually or even annually. Make every effort to completely satisfy all your indebtedness with every creditor over time. They will see how long it will take by your plan, so show them how it will take time. Justify your plan and footnote it, or whatever it takes to be transparent. It is possible the creditor will see your plan more like a bankruptcy repayment plan, but without the bankruptcy part. If that's what it is, then fine. That's what it is then. Creditors, if they receive your credible plan, they should do a loan modification or change in terms agreement, regardless of how weak the numbers are. Your intention is to eventually repay your loans in full without having the debt discharged in bankruptcy. It could be that you effectively file a bankruptcy plan without having to file bankruptcy, because it's all you can do if that's the case. Avoid having to file bankruptcy, though, if at all possible. The creditors will be able to see your plan and will likely pay them more money than if you had to file bankruptcy and force some kind of basically the same plan or worse. Okay? Negotiate changes to debt repayment terms using your Tunabudget Worksheet Plan. Again, your Tunabudget Worksheet Plan will show each debt owed, together with all the required payments under the liabilities piece, right? It will show everything that would end up on a bankruptcy petition anyway, because it will be 100% accurate to the best of your ability. While the regular monthly payment amount is listed in the monthly payment column, as you pre-spend future paychecks, obviously the actual amount you can pay will be less. But leave the regular full payment amount in there to show what it's supposed to be. So when you communicate to the lender what your regular payment is, showing him you know that amount, but that you can only pay a lesser amount per the plan, the creditor will likely accept the same. For example, the regular monthly payment amount might, let's say it's $100, but your budget, pre-spent paycheck by paycheck, will only allow a total of $50 per month, okay? Feel free to show the creditor that this entire plan and that the revised $50 payment amount is the maximum that you can pay. He'll see why, because he's going to see the worksheet, right? In a bankruptcy petition, the creditor may be forced to take the reduced payment anyway of $50, or have it completely legally discharged to zero if it's unsecured debt. It is possible the creditor may give you some pushback, though, and ask that you pay more than the $50 because you're paying optional voluntary religious contributions that may even exceed the $100 payment amount, okay? So be prepared with an answer. In the U.S., you have the right to exercise your own religious worship, however you choose. So if your desire to pay a full 10% tithe to your church, for example, Put it in there in your Tuna Budget Worksheet Plan and be proud of it. Tell the creditor that you have every intention of paying a full religious contribution. Take it or leave it. It's your right to worship however you choose. When creditors see your plan, they will be able to see that your plan is not only reasonable, but it is supportable and even documented. Creditors need to understand these conditions before they'll decide to modify the terms of your debts, though. You have not only stepped up to all your obligations, you have prepared the right solution to your own problem. This is not the creditor's problem. It is yours, as you know, and you are responsible to come up with repayment solutions through your own Tuna Budget Worksheet Plan. And you are bringing the lender your solution, even if it's on a best efforts basis. And you did it at little or no expense to the creditor, right? They didn't have to spend any collection costs and expenses to go after you. That, my friend, any creditor will love. As another reminder, you will want to update your plan and send it in to each creditor at least quarterly or semi-annually at worst. Best, always extend your plan out at least a year, together with a current signed personal financial statement on the lender's financial statement template, because it has all those attestations and certifications that everything's like true and correct, right? So what does promise to pay actually mean? You understand what it means when a promissory note says you promise to pay, don't you? It means you will make the payments on a financial obligation in a certain time and manner. What does it mean to you? It means the loan was legally entered into with a binding contractual obligation between you and your creditor that is enforceable under the state laws governing the contract. It was made in good faith to you, with trust and integrity between the parties, right? Any failing on your part to make payment may be considered a breach of trust or even being dishonest if you really do have the ability to pay. The creditor has legal recourse against you if you default or fail to pay within the written terms. The lender will seek remedies or damages through civil litigation against you. It also means that you will repay the obligation, period, regardless of how long it takes. Have you ever heard of or applied the word ownership to all your financial obligations? Or the word honesty? Who are you anyway if you think you can walk away from your obligations just like that? Are you a person of your word? But you say you can't repay, right? Okay. The debt level may be too heavy, but you should not give up until you've used your Tuna Budget Worksheet Plan to see what you can come up with. What changes in life need to be made, right? It may be that you'd be making token payments for the rest of your life and never really get anywhere with the debt. Well, that's what bankruptcy is for, basically, to clean up such dilemmas. But short of that, let your plan repay what it can over a reasonable but extended period. You don't want to shaft a creditor, okay? Any creditor. It's called doing the best you can. Something you're willing to live with. In the end, your character, your integrity, it's on trial. And your Tuna Budget Worksheet Plan will help you clearly see what your best efforts really means, okay? This short ad is sponsored by the Debt Crisis Problem Podcast. Attention listeners, please join us at tunabudget.com to tune into the Debt Crisis Problem Podcast, where in plain English we discuss the 20 risks that could soon fuel a serious economic downturn. We explore these critical risks and offer practical insights for navigating financial uncertainty. Join us for thought-provoking discussions that encourage transparency and awareness. Subscribe now to stay informed and be ready for whatever comes next. I think you'll like this next little section. You have to repay your debts until... Accounting rules and regulatory supervision require certain treatment of unpaid debts. You need to know about this. Financial weaknesses and delinquency will determine how long debts can be kept on the creditor's books. And prudent creditors will exercise their remedies to collect on their receivables well before they have to charge or write off your debt. Okay, the pressures will come before they have to write it off. And even if they did write it off, that does not mean that the debt is not legally owed. It is still legally owed, and that you don't have to repay it. You do. Okay, they just can't keep it as a bankable asset, if you would. You have to repay your debt until it's paid in full or otherwise satisfied, resolved, or considered by the institution as being uncollectible, and they stop pursuing collection. Of course, an approved bankruptcy plan will legally affect your loans too. You should make every effort to repay all your indebtedness and show that repayment on your plan, even if it takes a lifetime to do so. You have to decide on the repayment amount. Let it be $50 a month or more, or $1 or whatever. But what if it's not really possible to repay those horrible situations? Now, realistic, if a reasonable, supportable, and documented plan fails to meet the creditor's expectation for repayment because you just clearly are unable to do so under any way, shape, or form, the creditor may go ahead and exercise its rights to pursue its legal remedies or maneuvers against you. And it is possible you may have to file a bankruptcy petition to protect certain assets. But in most cases, you should be able to present your plan and come to a reasonable solution and avoid bankruptcy. Every debt should be included as part of the repayment plan, all your debts, wherever they come from, even if the repayment amount that you stick in there is really small. At some point, debts will either be restructured and repaid, or they'll be written off and the collection remedies pursued. They'll try their best, right, to collect. Thankfully, even the worst nightmare debt crisis scenarios also come to an end one day. They do. This is not something you need to fret over to the point where you're giving up on yourself or your spouse, your children, and everything else that's precious to you. When you do feel overwhelmed, go into the best you can mode and just leave it at that. Get some fresh air and sunshine and go on a nice walk, okay? That's free, right? And doing your best, being honest in the repayment of your debts, that's what we're asking here. Yes, this fight, it will end someday. Until then, your Tunabudget Worksheet Plan may still include some amount of repayment, even if it's just $10 per paycheck. It's called doing what you think is best, with all things considered, if you so choose. It may be best to not settle debts. You've heard of that before? That here's $2,000, pre-settled my $10,000 debt, as that $8,000 deficiency may in fact be treated as taxable income by the IRS, meaning that you'll have a tax liability to pay on that $8,000 forgiven from the settlement. And a bankruptcy petition obviously may need to be filed instead of settling debts. You might want to work with some legal counsel if there's any questions on that, of course. But don't be surprised that the proposed debt repayments under a Tunabudget Worksheet Plan are close to that, if in a heavy debt situation, that are close to that of a bankruptcy plan, if the lower payments are similar to that under a bankruptcy petition, which I'm saying could be the case. That's why creditors will likely accept your plan in the first place and save the legal fees and costs in pursuing collection. If a bankruptcy filing is ever needed, it will likely be needed only in the rare instance of cleaning those things up, the heavy things that can't be cleaned up. Debts can be legally discharged from having to be repaid, of course. Although a discharged debt can no longer be pursued by the creditor, look at this. You still must deal with the moral side of the debt repayment via your promise to pay. Here, listen carefully. Some people, post-bankruptcy relief, if you would, where there is no legal obligation to repay whatsoever, they still feel a moral obligation to repay, especially when their financial condition has improved to where they can repay discharged debts in full. Guess what? Some people do. When the creditor can't request the repayment, though, if the creditor receives a payment, though, it can at least accept it. It will be booked as a recovery on their charged-off loan. That is certainly one way to fulfill your promise to pay. Or maybe it's not in full. Maybe if they can, or if a person can or doesn't want to, but maybe it's at least something, right, to satisfy that personal side of it all, the moral side. Therefore, if you decide, not the creditor, but if you decide to send in fund towards any debts that may have been legally discharged, again, the lender can still be repaid. So you can decide to do something there if you want to. On discharged debts, you will not be contacted by the creditor, so you understand that, right? For collection under any circumstances. Maybe you will send a minimum amount or the entire amount, as some people do if you're able to once debts are discharged. But at the end of your life, just say that you can look back and that you did the best you could because you are an honest person, right? I have some candid questions for you I'd like you to just think about. First up, are you honest? What is the best way to figure out how to best cover your living expenses and communicate with your creditors when you need to modify your repayment terms? Are you willing to prepare a Tunabudget Worksheet Plan to, in effect, pre-spend your entire budget and determine your best effort modified debt repayment plans? Will you now be more careful to do everything possible to avoid debt, pay with cash, and even save for a rainy day? Thank you for joining us. Today we explored bankruptcy, highlighting the importance of open conversations in financial awareness. And we want to hear from you at Tunabudget.com. Submit your own candid conversation memo on any of these topics and share your insights. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe for future podcasts. Until next time, visit Tunabudget.com for your free Tunabudget Worksheet Plan, the most powerful budget worksheet plan in the world. Yours. Thanks again.